How did a machine with four wheels reshape an entire nation? In the early 20th century, the streets of Detroit were a patchwork of horse-drawn wagons, bicycles, and the occasional experimental motorcar. It was a city on the brink of transformation, where ambition collided with innovation. The question was not whether the automobile would survive, but who would harness its potential first, and on what scale. At the center of this revolution stood Ransom Olds, a Midwesterner with a vision of mechanical reliability. In 1901, he founded the Olds Motor Vehicle Company, introducing the curved dash Oldsmobile, one of the first mass-produced automobiles in America. Unlike handcrafted carriages, the curved dash used standardized parts, allowing assembly efficiency that would later inspire others. By 1904, Olds had sold over 5,000 vehicles, a modest number by modern standards, but groundbreaking for an industry still learning how to industrialize transportation. Parallel to Olds, Henry Ford was quietly redefining what it meant to build a car for the masses. Ford understood that the internal combustion engine was not just a machine, but a puzzle. It needed to be simple, reliable, and affordable. Early Ford prototypes, like the 1903 Model A, were fragile and expensive, but they were laboratories for experimentation. Ford obsessively iterated, studying every gear, every spark, every inefficiency. The assembly line concept was incubating in these workshops. Detroit's factories were noisy, chaotic, and largely staffed by immigrants learning new industrial skills. Swedish, Italian, and Polish workers brought craftsmanship from home, applying it to mechanized production. The result was a fusion of old-world skill and new-world ambition, a human engine powering mechanical progress. By 1908, the release of the Model T would signal a turning point. Ford's breakthrough was not merely in design, but in production philosophy. He simplified the car into a series of interchangeable components, reducing assembly time dramatically. What took weeks in 1903 could now be completed in hours. Early production figures hinted at the scale to come. 10,000 cars in 1908, doubling within 2 years. This was more than industrial growth. It was the democratization of mobility. But the technology itself was still temperamental. Engines required constant maintenance, brakes were rudimentary, and roads were largely unpaved. Every car sold carried risk. Every buyer was an experiment in trust. The question Ford asked, and the question America was silently grappling with, was simple yet profound. If you had lived in 1910, would you have trusted a noisy, unreliable machine over a horse? Economic forces accelerated the change. Detroit sat at the convergence of the Great Lakes, rail lines, and raw material suppliers. Steel from Pittsburgh, rubber from Ohio, and glass from Toledo arrived in a city that was rapidly transforming into an industrial hub. Banks were beginning to recognize the profitability of automotive loans, creating a financial ecosystem that could sustain rapid expansion. In this way, the rise of the automobile was never just about machines. It was about the geography and infrastructure that allowed them to flourish. Legislative support was minimal, but evolving. Early traffic laws were inconsistent, reflecting the novelty of the automobile itself. Municipalities grappled with speed limits, right-of-way rules, and licensing requirements. By 1910, Detroit had begun experimenting with standardized road signage and basic traffic enforcement. Each innovation, mechanical, human, or legal, pushed the car closer to ubiquity. By the end of this era, the stage was set. Ransom Olds had proven that standardized production could succeed. Henry Ford had demonstrated that reliability and affordability could create demand. The workforce, immigrant, ambitious, and adaptable, was ready to scale the experiment into a national enterprise. Yet beneath this optimism, subtle tensions existed. Over-reliance on raw materials, the fragility of early engines, and the looming question of who would control the assembly lines of the future. Part 1 concludes with Detroit poised at the threshold of mass production, a city and an industry on the brink of reshaping America forever. By 1913, Henry Ford had refined an idea that would redefine manufacturing worldwide, the moving assembly line. While assembly lines had existed in rudimentary forms, Ford's innovation was in continuous motion. Cars no longer waited for laborers to bring parts. The car came to the worker. Each man or woman had a specific task, repeated over and over, until thousands of identical, reliable vehicles rolled off the line. The impact was immediate. Production of the Model T exploded from 10,000 units in 1908 to over 170,000 by 1914. By 1916, Ford was producing 735,000 vehicles a year, making it the largest car manufacturer in the world. Standardization meant that repairs were easier, parts were interchangeable, and costs dropped. The price of a Model T fell from $850 in 1908 to just $360 by 1916, opening car ownership to middle-class Americans for the first time. This industrial surge transformed not only Detroit, but the American labor market. Factories employed tens of thousands, including immigrants and unskilled workers who could now earn a steady wage. Ford famously introduced the $5 workday in 1914, nearly doubling the average wage for industrial labor. While criticized by some as a public relations stunt, it had a profound effect. Workers could now afford the very cars they were building. The automobile had become both product and economic catalyst. Mechanically, the Model T was designed for durability and simplicity. Its 2.9-liter inline-4 engine could run on gasoline of variable quality, and the planetary transmission made shifting gears almost intuitive. The chassis was flexible, able to handle the rough, unpaved roads that crisscrossed rural America. In short, the Model T solved the problem of accessibility, both for drivers and for the varied infrastructure of a growing nation. The cultural consequences were equally profound. Cars liberated families from the constraints of proximity, enabling the earliest waves of suburban migration. By 1920, middle-class Americans were buying automobiles at unprecedented rates. Roughly 4 million vehicles were registered nationwide, up from 500,000 just a decade earlier. The Model T became a symbol of personal freedom, a rolling testament to America's industrial optimism. Yet, mass production came with tension. Ford's system demanded repetition and conformity, leaving little room for creativity. Injuries were common, and the work was grueling. Labor unrest simmered beneath the surface, occasionally erupting into strikes and confrontations. The speed of industrial expansion also stressed supply chains. Steel shortages, rubber price fluctuations, and logistical bottlenecks threatened to slow production at multiple points in the 1910s. Meanwhile, competitors were taking note. General Motors sought to challenge Ford's dominance by offering choice. Chevrolet, Buick, and Oldsmobile began emphasizing style and variety over the uniform reliability of the Model T. By the mid-1920s, the stage was set for an industry shift. Uniformity versus consumer preference, mass production versus diversification. The roads themselves became a theater of transformation. The federal government began investing in infrastructure, though progress was uneven. Dirt tracks and muddy paths gave way slowly to paved highways. Gas stations, motels, and diners appeared, creating new economic ecosystems dependent on mobility. The automobile was not just a machine, it was a signal that America's geography was being rewritten. By 1927, the Model T's run ended at over 15 million units produced. Ford had achieved what many thought impossible, the creation of a truly affordable car. But the era also left foreshadowing cracks. Over-reliance on a single model made Ford vulnerable. Competitors were learning to exploit consumer desire for choice. The industry was about to enter a phase of consolidation, innovation, and cultural complexity. By the 1920s, Detroit had become the beating heart of American automotive ambition. The rise of Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and Chrysler had transformed a city of tinkering workshops into a global industrial powerhouse. Competition had shifted from simply building cars to mastering scale, efficiency, and market influence. General Motors pioneered a model of consumer choice that contrasted sharply with Ford's standardization. Sloan introduced annual model updates, offering variety in design, color, and luxury. Chevrolet, Buick, and Cadillac each carved out distinct market segments. By 1929, GM had surpassed Ford in sales, signaling that adaptability could rival raw efficiency. Chrysler was founded in 1925 by Walter Chrysler. They emphasized engineering excellence. The Chrysler 6, introduced in 1924, featured innovative high-compression engines. Better suspensions and more reliable brakes were also key innovations. Chrysler's focus on technology and performance pushed competitors to reconsider production speed. They also had to rethink the sophistication of their vehicles. By the late 1920s, the automotive industry accounted for about 1/10 of American employment. Over 500,000 workers were in manufacturing alone. Steel mills, glass factories, rubber plantations, and machine shops depended on car production. The city's skyline was dotted with factory smokestacks. Neighborhoods grew around plants, populated by families relied on assembly line work. Technological innovation advanced in tandem with industrial scale. Engine designs became more reliable and transmissions more robust. Suspensions became more forgiving, allowing cars to travel farther and faster. The introduction of the V8 engine in 1932 transformed the performance landscape. Automobiles became not only tools of mobility but objects of aspiration and identity. Yet the Great Depression of 1929 exposed vulnerabilities beneath this industrial dominance. Sales plummeted and factories closed, leading to soaring unemployment. Detroit's workers faced a stark contrast to the previous decade's prosperity. Union organizing gained momentum, setting the stage for future labor reforms. The tension between efficiency and worker welfare became a defining challenge. The industry's cultural imprint was undeniable, reshaping urban design. Cars encouraged suburban growth and created a burgeoning teenage car culture. By the mid-1930s, vehicles were used not only for commuting but for leisure. Road trips became a national pastime, and diners and motels emerged along highways. Legislation began to catch up as local and state governments standardized traffic laws. Safety regulations laid the groundwork for future policy. The automobile became a public concern, influencing city planning and taxation. By 1941, as the United States entered World War II, factories transformed almost overnight. Passenger car production halted and was replaced by tanks and military trucks. This wartime conversion demonstrated the national significance of the Big Three. Workers, often women, became critical to the war effort. Detroit earned the nickname Arsenal of Democracy. By the end of this era, the Big Three had solidified not only market dominance but also a new industrial paradigm. Scale, innovation, and consumer responsiveness combined with a workforce capable of meeting extraordinary demand. Yet underlying challenges persisted. Dependence on mass-market sales, exposure to economic volatility, and the delicate balance between technological advancement and labor stability. These tensions would shape the post-war boom that followed, setting the stage for suburban expansion, highway construction, and the cultural integration of automobiles into American life. The end of World War II in 1945 marked a new chapter for the American automobile industry. Factories that had churned out tanks, aircraft engines, and military trucks now shifted back to passenger cars. The Big Three, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, leveraged wartime production expertise to expand output at unprecedented scale. By 1946, the industry produced over 2 million vehicles annually, surpassing pre-war numbers and signaling the beginning of a mass consumption era. The post-war economic boom fueled demand. Returning soldiers were eager to embrace the mobility they had glimpsed abroad. Government programs like the GI Bill enabled millions of veterans to buy homes and cars simultaneously. The automobile became both a symbol of personal freedom and a tool of suburban expansion. Cities sprawled outward, connected by newly constructed roads and highways. Families left crowded urban centers for single-family homes with driveways and garages, spaces designed with the car in mind. Mechanically, vehicles evolved to match these cultural shifts. Automatic transmissions became more common, reducing the learning curve for new drivers. Suspension systems were improved to handle long highway drives. Engines were tuned for greater reliability and efficiency. Cars were no longer just functional machines. They were designed to provide comfort, performance, and style. Tail fins, chrome detailing, and bench seats were as much statements of aspiration as they were technological features. The cultural consequences were profound. Teenagers, now with disposable income and increasing independence, embraced car culture in a way previous generations could not. Drive-in theaters, diners, and roadside attractions became central to suburban life. For many, the car was the gateway to social freedom, a rolling extension of the household. Families relied on vehicles for commuting, shopping, and leisure, intertwining the automobile with daily life more tightly than ever before.